What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Wake and Jake College Football Show. Week 8 is officially in the books, and there were some good games this weekend, and there was a few games where your boy was right. Called it. Absolutely called it. We're not going to mention the ones that I was also very wrong on, but I nailed a few of these. Let's get into a recap of the weekend. We'll also get into my dead list, betting recap, and finish off with, dude, are you high? But before we do any of that, let's get a little high. All right, let's start with the Friday night games. We'll just touch briefly on this one. Oregon 35, Purdue 0. Oregon definitely could have scored 50 points if they wanted. There was just absolutely no way Purdue was winning this game. Dylan Gabriel, 21 of 25. He did throw one interception. I'm sure that's one he would like to have back, but 21 of 25 is not bad. And the running backs were averaging over 4 yards per carry, which, do the math, you run it 3 times, that's a first down every single time. And the defense forced 2 turnovers and allowed 0 points, had 10 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. You really cannot ask for much more against the worst team in the country. And we'll kind of get into this later, but I believe Oregon will probably be the number 1 team in the nation going into this next weekend. Florida State at Duke. Duke 23, Florida State 16. I told you Florida State was not going to turn it around this week. I did not believe in Brock Glenn. I didn't believe that Florida State had any fight left, and I figured a Manny Diaz defense is going to be too much for this Florida State offense. And there was a lot of hype around Florida State going into this game. National media had it. They thought Florida State would turn it around, especially coming off a bye, and they did not. Now, Duke was terrible offensively, and I did say that they weren't world beaters offensively, but oh my goodness, they were really awful on Friday. But Florida State turned the ball over 4 times, and one of those was an interception that was returned for a touchdown. They also gave Duke a 36-yard field to score a touchdown on off of a turnover. And then a third turnover. Duke only ended up going 1 yard on that drive off after that turnover, but was still able to kick a field goal. You gave Duke a touchdown off an interception, and then 2 scoring drives with short fields off of turnovers. All of that, and take those 3 scoring drives, those 2 touchdowns, well, not drives because one was a return, but take those 2 touchdowns and that field goal, technically would have been enough to beat Florida State. Just an ugly, ugly game. I'm sorry if you watched it, or if you're a Florida State fan, or even a Duke fan, because, yeah, you won, but it was ugly. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if you had to watch that. Oklahoma State at BYU. Oklahoma State loses 35-38. It looked like for a minute that they were going to win this game and that BYU was going to finally get their first loss of the season. I said going into the game that BYU's strength was their defense and that the offense had just been kind of and that was definitely the opposite in this game. Oklahoma State finally found some success in the run game, both from their quarterback and from Ollie Gordon. But man, Oklahoma State's QB play is still up in the air. Garrett Rangel started the game, didn't look terrible, had a nice long run in the second quarter there. Goes down with an injury, and Alan Bowman had to take over. And honestly, Rangel had some moments, but neither quarterback necessarily played well. So BYU was able to pull off the win. Like I said, their offense all of a sudden found a spark. I guess technically they were going against Oklahoma State's defense, and Oklahoma State's defense has just been doo-doo. Offensively and defensively, Oklahoma State has just been doo-doo, but they have found some games where they are able to score. I was shocked to see Oklahoma State put up this many points. I guess I was technically surprised to see BYU put up that many too, just based on how their offense had been. But BYU stays undefeated, and Oklahoma State is still doo-doo. Noon slate on Saturday. We had Miami 52, Louisville 45. Louisville's defense might be bad. This is like the third, well, I guess they didn't really let up a whole lot against Virginia, but Kevin Jennings tore them up. Cam Ward has now torn them up. Notre Dame tore them up. Now, granted, some turnovers didn't help that, but Louisville's defense might not be that great. Now, Miami loves to give up explosive plays. I don't know what happened after the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. These last 3 games, so I guess the first 4 weeks, these last 3 games just cannot stop allowing explosive plays. And it's not even just like on the ground or through the air, like one or the other. It's both. They just cannot stop doing it for either. Uh, Now, in this game, though, Miami never had to come from behind, which is different from their last 2 games. And no, 7-3 in the first quarter does not count as coming from behind. Uh, Offensively, it feels like Louisville is fine. It feels like they score enough in games to win it or potentially win it, but that defense might be a different story going forward. I think we need to, I feel like people thought Louisville's defense was going to be good this year, and I think we might need to take a step back and say it might not be that great. Miami's defense, they just need to clean it up. They need to stop allowing explosive plays, and so far it has not bit them in the ass as they are still undefeated, but they've had to come from behind twice, and it's going to come back to bite them in the ass. It is. It may not be in the regular season, but ACC championship game against Clemson or even in the playoffs, yeah, that's not gonna hold up. Virginia at Clemson. Clemson 48, Virginia 31. This game pissed me off. Clemson was down early in this game, 10-3. It just gave Virginia a short field off an interception. Nothing too much to worry about. They stormed back. Going into the fourth quarter, the score was 38-10. Game was over. It never really felt like Clemson was in worry of losing this game by that point. They did score 10 points in that fourth quarter, but Virginia was able to score some garbage time touchdowns and absolutely fucked my bet. I had Clemson minus 20.5, and those garbage time touchdowns just screwed me. Just another reason for me to hate Virginia. I didn't want to put respect on their name. They keep proving that I don't have to, and then they go ahead and do that. They're officially on my shit list. But like I said, even at the beginning of the game, when Clemson was down early, I wasn't worried. Virginia sucks. Clemson is a wagon. Klubnik threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did have that one interception at the very beginning of the game. And as a team, they ran for nearly 200 yards and for 5 yards a pop. So Clemson's good, guys. Watch out. I firmly believe it's going to be a Clemson-Miami ACC championship game. It's hard to convince me otherwise. I guess Pitt might have something to say about that, but we'll see. Clemson's an absolute wagon. Nebraska at Indiana. Holy shit. Indiana 56, Nebraska 7. The mini wagon is officially on the verge of being a full-blown wagon. And I said that Nebraska wouldn't win this game, but I did not think it would be this lopsided. I figured it would be a 2-score game, sure. Not like this. Now, Curtis Rourke is going to be out, it sounds like, for a week, or at least a week. But I still think it's time we start putting some respect on his name. He transfers over from the MAC and has proven to be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. I know Big Ten fans, Indiana fans, have already put some respect on Curtis Rourke's name, but nationally, it needs to start happening more. Nebraska never had a shot in this game. They turned the ball over 5 times, and they just could never get anything going. Dylan Raiola didn't look great. And you can't win when you turn the ball over that many times. And it is time for some people to start putting respect on this mini wagon that is Indiana and start pushing it towards a full-blown wagon. Because you look at the rest of their schedule, Ohio State is about it. That scares you when you look at that, because this Michigan team does not look good. And I don't remember who else they play, but it's nobody to be scared of. I think they play Purdue at one point. We know that's going to go. We got Auburn at Mizzou. This game pissed me off. Auburn 17, Mizzou 21. I had Auburn money line, so this one hurt. Most of the game it didn't. Most of the game I was pumped. It was great, especially as someone who is a Mizzou hater. This game was fantastic until it wasn't. Auburn was not allowing Mizzou to do shit on offense. Now, Brady Cook did go down with an injury, and Drew Pine did have to take over, but oh, wow. Drew Pine. I see why you're the backup. He was all out of sorts. He could not get anything going. He did lead a scoring drive in the second half for 3 points. I'll give him that, I guess. But midway through the third quarter, Mizzou was down 17-3. Brady Cook miraculously comes back from the injury, comes back into the game, and the offense started to find a little momentum. And at the very end of the game, Cook led a 17-play, 95-yard touchdown drive in 3 minutes and 40 seconds and took the lead, took a 4-point lead with 46 seconds left. That one's got to hurt Auburn. It hurts me. I bet on you, but I bet it hurts you more. Auburn is in shambles, and Mizzou just continues to have a horseshoe shoved all the way up their fucking ass. I don't know how they keep doing this, but they do, and it makes me mad as a Mizzou hater. South Carolina at Oklahoma. Wow. Just wow. South Carolina 35, Oklahoma 9. Oklahoma fans, you have got to be pissed and you have got to be demanding answers because this is unacceptable. Now, I don't have any affiliation with Oklahoma. I don't give a shit about Oklahoma, but I can only imagine that if I were an Oklahoma fan, I would be demanding some answers and want some shit changed. South Carolina just walked right into your stadium, fucked you right in the face, and made you their bitch. And that cannot feel good. Now, this was, believe it or not, this was a very defensive game. Even though South Carolina scored 35, that's a little skewed because some of those were defensive touchdowns. South Carolina's defense had 9 sacks and 13 tackles for loss, and Oklahoma's defense had 6 sacks and 11 tackles for loss. Wow. South Carolina's offense was not great, like I said, to score 35 points. It's just Oklahoma's offense was way worse and had 4 turnovers, 2 of which were returned for touchdowns. So take away those. I mean, let's be honest, South Carolina probably wouldn't have done much if they hadn't scored on the actual return. And it's a 21-9 game. A lot closer, but still not that close. Oklahoma's in shambles. Arnold was benched originally for Hawkins. Hawkins comes out in this game, sucks. I mean, he hasn't looked great to begin with. People can say all they want. Oh, he's looked good. He's brought more life to this offense. Sure, he brought life, I guess, to the offense, but it didn't take much to bring life to that offense. And now Hawkins has been benched for now Arnold. Arnold has now taken over, I guess, what I would assume would be the starting role moving forward. I'm sorry, Oklahoma fans. It sucks. It must be rough. Afternoon games. Bama at Tennessee. Bama 17, Tennessee 24. The third Saturday in October lived up to the hype, but it was ugly. It was so ugly. And if you watch this game, Tennessee's lucky to have won this game. Last week it was one of those things, they were lucky to win the game because Florida kept shooting themselves in the foot. This week, Tennessee was lucky to win the game because they kept shooting themselves in the foot. It's just Bama did it a few more times than Tennessee did. And they are lucky because they had 3 turnovers, most of those while driving deep into Bama territory, 2 missed field goals, and 11 penalties. I'm going to tell you right now, usually if you have those type of stats, you're losing the game. You just happen to go up against a team who had even more penalties, almost as many turnovers, and 1 missed field goal. Just rough. And Nico Iamaleava, dude, he's a redshirt freshman. He's still got time. I can't rip on him too much. But he missed like 5 or 6 deep throws to open receivers. Imagine if those also connected. This would have been a rout. If Tennessee could have just had a couple little things just go their way, if they don't fumble on the opening drive of the game, if Nico doesn't have his arm hit when he throws one of his or I guess he only had 1 interception. When he throws his interception, if he was just a little more accurate on his deep throws, I'm talking just 1 or 2 of those connect, you're getting beat by a lot, Alabama. You guys were lucky to have it even beat this close. This Bama team is in trouble. I can tell you right now, the Bama fans are not happy, and they are not coping well with this. This could have been a winnable game for Alabama, but kudos to Tennessee for absolutely limiting Milroe's legs and shutting down Ryan Williams. This Tennessee defense played great. Sure, they allowed a few touchdown drives. That's going to happen with Alabama. They have such a great offense. It's going to happen. But you kept them out of the end zone and from kicking field goals just enough. It was a fantastic game. Great to see. I have a qualm with this game, but we'll kind of get into that later. We'll touch on that later. Notre Dame 31, Georgia Tech 13. I nailed this game. I said it. If Haynes King does not play, Notre Dame wins this game easily. Now, when I recorded the other day, it had all reports were pointing towards Haynes King starting. Nothing had been official, and even line movement showed that they thought Haynes King was going to play. And then, after I recorded and uploaded, the news comes out that Haynes King is actually not going to play this weekend, which changes everything. And we'll also touch on that later as well, because I'm a man of integrity, and I just want you to remember that. Haynes King, he is the heart and soul of that team. I told you if he doesn't play, they get absolutely routed, and that's exactly what happened. Georgia Tech scored at the very end of the first quarter to go up 7-0, and then Notre Dame proceeded to outscore Georgia Tech 31-0 until the very last drive of the game for Georgia Tech, when it was garbage time and the game had already been won. Hopefully Haynes King is not out long term. If he is, Georgia Tech's in trouble, because this was started out as a very good season for Georgia Tech. And at 4-3, some may argue I should have them on my dead watch. I'm not going to do that. Actually, they might be 5-3 now I think about it. So they're definitely not on dead watch. I take that back. If Haynes King can come back, I like Georgia Tech the rest of the season. If he's out for a while, it could get ugly. We got Michigan at Illinois. Michigan 7, Illinois 21. Oof, Michigan is bad. Defensively, they were fine. They held Luke Altmaier to 9 of 18 for 80 yards. That's terrible. That's 50% completion percentage for less than 100 yards. And they weren't exactly that great on the ground either. It's not like Illinois rushed for like 300-something yards. No, they didn't do, it was nothing spectacular. And Michigan still couldn't win. They also turned the ball over 3 times, so that doesn't help. But if I'm going to say something positive about Michigan, their passing attack looked closer to being competent than it has this whole season. So I guess that's a plus if I'm saying one nice thing about Michigan. I just don't know where Michigan goes from here. Preview for later, they're officially on dead watch. Let's just put it that way. I think there is a few more games that they could lose the rest of the season, and man, what a jump from national championship to this. NC State at Cal. I did not preview this game. I didn't think I had to preview this game because NC State is a dead team, but man, Cal. What's going on? NC State wins 24-23, and Cal fans, you have got to be in shambles. You started the season 3-0, and you are now 3-4. You had a chance to beat Florida State, just couldn't quite do enough on offense, had to settle for 3 field goals, attempted 5, but only made 3 and lost that game by 5 points. You allowed Miami to come back from 25 points down in the second half. You missed a field goal at the end of the game to beat Pitt. Now, your kicker has been terrible, 50%, not good. But you shank a field goal at the end of the game to beat Pitt. And then this week, with a different kicker, you allowed NC State to come back from 23-10 in the fourth quarter. And for the second straight week, one of your kickers missed a potential game winner in the final 2 minutes of the game. Started the season 3-0, currently 3-4. Where do you guys go from here? And this has got to hurt, you very easily could be a 6-1, 5-2, 7-0 team right now. But no, you're 3-4 because you just college kickers and collapses in the second half. Colorado at Arizona, I nailed this one. Colorado 34, Arizona 7. There was no way that Arizona should have been favored at home against Colorado. Arizona is overrated as hell, and I've been saying it. Fafita's not a good quarterback. He's got one really good receiver, and it's the only person he likes to throw to. Now, when the other team has a defensive back who is very good, is one of the best, and can shut down your top receiver, what the fuck is your quarterback supposed to do who only likes to throw to that receiver? It's just, I just baffled that Arizona could have been favored in this game. Colorado surprisingly ran the ball as much as they threw it, and that is not something we have seen from this team. They actively try to not run the ball, but they did it in this game, and they weren't terrible at it, I guess. Fafita was not good. Shedeur wasn't outstanding either. I mean, he threw for like almost 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he did throw 2 interceptions. But Fafita was not good. Offense was not good. Defense was not great. Like I said, they did force those two turnovers, but they're still not good. Arizona was on dead watch previously, but they might be dead. USC at Maryland, just USC fucking sucks, and it makes me so happy. USC 28, Maryland 29. There were so many people, USC fans especially, that thought USC was just going to waltz right into the Big Ten and dominate. Thought they were going to be Penn State, Ohio State, not Michigan, because Michigan just likes to run the ball, but you know what I mean, dominant as hell. And that has not been the case. All 4 losses that they've had this year, they held a lead in the second half at some point and proceeded to give that lead up. This week they were up 28-14 in the fourth quarter, and they lose 28-29. I love it. And I said it before the season. I think Lincoln Riley's gone. He either more than likely bolts to the NFL, or he heads over to like the Big 12 or the ACC, somewhere where he doesn't have to play Big 10 and SEC teams, because he doesn't want to. He's a giant pussy and does not like to play these hard teams. And again, it's not because he's going to get fired. Now, maybe he does. That'd be shocking, but I don't think he gets fired. But I think he voluntarily quits. And if he doesn't just like retire and take a couple years off, he's going to the NFL or to an easier conference. I'm calling it right now. Evening games. LSU at Arkansas. LSU 34, Arkansas 10. There was no chance that LSU was losing this game if you watched it. Arkansas kept this game close for a little while, but LSU just took off in the second half. They finished the game with 18 unanswered points. Arkansas could not get anything going in the run game. They also didn't really try, but it's hard to try when you're behind and have to throw the ball. I said it, if they wanted a chance to win this game, they had to get pressure on a quarterback who had not really been pressured well or was very good at avoiding pressure all season. And they failed. 0 sacks. I think they only had 3 tackles for loss. Just ugly game for Arkansas. They also turned the ball over 3 times, and they had the ball for nearly half the amount of time that LSU did. This was just complete and utter domination from start to finish. Like I said, it was technically close in the first half. It just was never actually close. It's time we start putting some respect on LSU's name. They lost the first week of the season to USC. I'm willing to forget that. First game of the season. Teams are way different now than they were then. Time to put some respect on LSU. Game of the night, where it was supposed to be. Georgia at Texas. Number 5 versus number 1. Georgia dominates. 30-15. I told you Kirby Smart was going to have this team fired up and ready to play. And they came out in that first half and absolutely dominated. And honestly, not even really offensively. Carson Beck did not look great, especially in that first half. He was throwing, I think he threw 3 interceptions, no touchdowns, threw for under 200 yards. He did not look good, but it didn't matter. Texas could not capitalize. Quinn Ewers did also turn the ball over twice in the first half, which gave Georgia very short field, so that didn't help. And actually, he even got benched at one point for Arch Manning. Now, Arch came in, was not able to do anything, so boom, Ewers went back in pretty quickly. He did not get benched for very long at all. But by halftime, Georgia was up 23-0. I mean, this game was basically over. Texas tried to kind of make a game of it in the second half, but again, it just never felt in doubt. Georgia was going to win. Defense played lights out. Running game actually was pretty decent for the first time. They actually utilized it more than they have been, and it was very successful, and they finally looked like the Georgia of old. Georgia for the SEC championship, Georgia for the national championship. I still don't hate that pick. Georgia's going to finish the season with one loss and be be a force to be reckoned with. Kansas State, West Virginia. Kansas State 45, West Virginia 18. I called this one, but I didn't. I just thought there was no way that Kansas State should only be a 2.5, 3.5 point favorite, whichever number you got it at. But absolute and utter domination. West Virginia fans are getting restless. I think they're ready for Neil Brown to go, and I don't blame them for that, honestly. I think it's time. You had a good season last year. It felt like kind of a flash in the pan, and this year has somewhat proven that. I figured Kansas State was going to come into this game and just run all over this West Virginia's doo-doo defense, but I was wrong. They didn't even try and force them. Now, don't get me wrong, when they ran the ball, they were successful. They just didn't need to. Avery Johnson threw it for nearly 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He looked amazing. And I've been a Kansas State fan all season. When you watch a lot of college football, you always root for your team, but it's hard not to adopt some teams along the way as long as they don't play your team. Kansas State being one of them. I really like Kansas State. I had them as a pick to play for the Big 12 championship game. I had them as a pick to make the playoffs, and I still like that because if you look, and I also do not think they're getting enough respect nationally because look at what they have coming up. They have, first of all, they've only have one loss. They're 6-1 or whatever it is, and their one loss is to an undefeated BYU team. Can we really fault them for losing to that BYU team now? That loss is looking better and better the further we get from it. And their upcoming schedule is Kansas, who is bad, Houston, who is also very bad, Arizona State, who, I don't know, we'll see. If Jeff Sims is the quarterback, that's very winnable. If Levitt is the quarterback, less winnable, but still very winnable. Cincinnati, that's a very winnable game. And then you finish the season against Iowa State. They could be going into that Iowa State game 10-1, which is very possible. And Iowa State game's not necessarily it's not a game that you would say that they have no chance in. They definitely have a chance to beat Iowa State. This Kansas State team could very easily finish 10-2, 11-1, which is right where I had them, preseason, and they could be pounding on the door of the playoffs. Speaking of Iowa State, I did not preview this game because, again, didn't think I really had to. But UCF 35, Iowa State 38. Iowa State was down 28-14 early in the third quarter. UCF did score on their opening drive of the second half. I think it was only like a 2 or 3 play drive anyways. They hit an explosive play and scored. But after that, they had roughly 70 yards of offense on their next 6 drives. Absolute and utter domination in that second half by Iowa State after getting run all over in that first half. I guess UCF did have 2 scoring drives in the second half. The second one was an interception that was returned all the way to the 1-yard line, so they only had to go 1 yard to score a touchdown. So there is that. They did have that touchdown drive as well. But all-time second half collapse by UCF. UCF was never really alive to begin the season. I didn't really have super high hopes for them. But if there were any hopes, they're officially dead. There's absolutely no hope for UCF moving forward. They are a dead team. They cannot figure it out when it comes to passing the ball. Ja'Curry Brown, 8-20, 62 yards, 2 interceptions. And if you run the ball twice as much as you throw it, you shouldn't be getting beat in time of possession 22.5 minutes to 37.5. That's embarrassing. To run it as much as you were and to throw it, like I said, and to run it twice as many times as you throw it, time of possession should not be that skewed. Just UCF is in trouble. Kentucky at Florida. Kentucky 24, Florida 48. Billy Napier, he's not getting fired, is he? Florida had a tough schedule coming into the season. Now, they haven't even hit the toughest part yet. But so far, in games that they should win, they've won. And in games that they weren't expected to win, they didn't. This is kind of, I think, where people expected Florida to be at this point. And it's one of those things. Now, you could argue that, he does deserve to be fired because of that. He hasn't exceeded expectations. He's just met them. I don't know. He might hold on to his job till at least the end of the year. Who knows? If he comes back next year, that would be insane. Jaden Baugh went off for Florida, 5 touchdowns. He had, I think, over 100 yards rushing. Nothing crazy yardage-wise, but 5 touchdowns. That's not bad. Lagway was great. In the defense, forced 3 turnovers. The defense, now, granted, you're going against a Kentucky offense that has been very all season. But still, defense forced 3 turnovers and looked good. Florida looked good yesterday. I don't know if that's more on Kentucky being that bad or what, or Florida's kind of turning it around because they didn't look bad against Tennessee either. Yeah, Billy Napier, I don't know about him getting fired anymore. I think he's starting to trend towards saving his job. But Kentucky's in trouble. Offense is lethargic. Defense is good, but the offense keeps putting them in bad situations while simultaneously just not giving the defense any help either. Kentucky has kind of a tough schedule moving forward, but Florida has an absolute gauntlet upcoming. Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State. Florida, they could lose out. They honestly could. I guess they could lose to Florida State. I don't see them losing to Florida State. But they could easily lose 4 of their last 5 games and miss a bowl game. And maybe that's what gets Billy Napier fired. If they don't make a bowl game, maybe he's gone. It's such a weird situation because I really thought he would have been gone by this point. All right, there's one late night game I do want to get into. TCU at Utah. TCU 13, Utah 7. Yikes. Utah, you're supposed to be a horrible place to play at night. Nobody is supposed to come in there and beat you or have an easy time beating you, and I guess technically 13-7 is not an easy win for TCU, but yikes. Utah has turned into Iowa from the past couple years. Just a phenomenal defense against a shit offense. TCU likes to score a lot of points. That's what they've been known for all season, and you held them to a season low of 13. They have not scored, I guess they scored 19 against Houston, but previous to that, they were scoring 30, 40 points a game. And you held them to their season low of 13. And TCU's defense is doo-doo. Been saying it all year. They have not given up less than 27 points to any team this season. 27 points is the least amount of points they've given up. And you couldn't get more than 7. This team, this offense is in deep shit. The defense continues to be dominant, but this offense has a lot of work to do. My dead list. 3 teams have been added, or added to dead watch, I should say. Louisville, Bama, and then Washington, who was already on dead watch. Those 3 are currently on dead watch. Bama's not had a good 3 weeks. Louisville's not had a good 4 weeks. Washington had a bye week, so we're still out on them, but they're on dead watch. And there's been 6 teams officially added to the dead list. Kentucky, dead. Utah, dead. Michigan, officially dead. USC, dead. Rutgers, dead. And then this one you could argue, because did they really have expectations? Cal, dead. So the full dead list now includes quite a handful of teams now. We got Kansas, Virginia Tech, Auburn, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, NC State, Florida State, UNC, Baylor, Arizona, and then the ones that I did just mention. These teams, they all had some hope entering the season, even if it was just a little bit, but they're all dead. I guess Baylor technically really didn't. Cal didn't. Rutgers maybe did, but that's the dead list. It's, like I said, we'll keep an eye out on Louisville and Bama, Washington, but they're on dead watch. Gophers are also still on dead watch, but they're less in the crosshairs than these 3 teams. They are actually on the verge of being alive, so we will see what next week brings. All right, time to recap the betting weekend. I would just like to say I hit at a 60% rate on all my bets this weekend. My 5 faves, maybe not. Now, I just want to say I am a man of integrity. So I am going to leave my Georgia Tech pick since it was on the show. even though right after the show, it was announced that Haynes King was not playing, which forced me to switch that pick to a Georgia money line. But since I just absolutely ooze with integrity, I will leave the Georgia Tech as my pick, even though, just know, I did want to switch it to Georgia money line after that news came out. But just remember, please remember how big of it is of me to leave that pick and give myself a losing record this week when I would have had a winning record if I switched that pick. 2-3 on the week. That's been the theme for the last forever, it feels like. 19-27 overall. Down 9.7 units. Just brutal. My buddy, on the other hand, I've officially waved the white flag. I might say that moving forward from this point out, if we put our records at 0, I'm going to win. But I'm calling the whole season as a whole a wash. I've gotten my ass absolutely kicked. Unless he has winless weeks going the rest of the way, I'm done for. He went 4-0 this weekend, 21-7 overall, up 14.5 units. Just, this competition is complete bullshit. All right, let's get into the final and my favorite segment. Dude, are you high? But before we do that, let's take a quick smoke break. Dude, are you high? There was a few different things I could have put here. I could have put Tennessee fans storming the field against a Bama team that did not deserve to be rushed against. Listen, I get it. 2 years ago you beat Bama at home. Huge fucking deal. You had not beat Bama in 16 years. Bama was ranked. You rushed the field. I get it. I completely get it. But since that moment, I feel like nationally, locally, all of that stuff, the Tennessee fans, the Tennessee media, the national media, they've all put Tennessee to a higher standard than they were. Tennessee, you went through some shitty years. You went maybe even you could argue a full decade of just shit. And now you're in a better place. Act like it. Don't rush the field against the number 7 team. You're ranked number 11. You did not need to rush the field against Bama and tear down the goalpost. I'm not picking them. I also could have put defensive back Braden Marshall for UCF for pulling into Deshaun Jackson. You heard me mention it earlier how UCF only had to go for a 1-yard touchdown run in the second half at one point because of an interception where the guy got down at the 1. It's not because he got tackled. It's because he dropped the ball at the 1-yard line. We already had a dude almost do that. Well, do it earlier this year. His teammate recovered it. And I think that's what happened here. I don't know if the ball went out of bounds or teammate recovered it. Either way, why the hell are we still doing this? Deshaun Jackson did that 15 years ago. And people continue to do it literally every year since. I don't understand why they keep doing it. Hold on to the ball. Just hold on to the ball. You don't need to drop it. You drop it too early every time, and it happens. And UCF lucked out that it didn't bite them in the ass in this case. But I'm not going to put him. I also could have put the refs from the Georgia-Texas game for being the biggest pussies. They called a pass interference penalty on Texas. Now, don't get me wrong. It was a bullshit penalty. It never should have been a penalty. And technically, I don't hate what the refs did, but it's the situation that preceded them making this decision that baffles me. They call pass interference on Texas. Shit call, whatever. Fans lose their minds. Sarkisian loses his mind. Fans start throwing shit onto the field and booing and yelling, and you know how fans get, but throwing shit onto the field a lot of shit. So the refs get together, discuss it for a little bit, and decide, you know what? It wasn't pass interference. No pass interference. Texas, you get that interception. To let the fans bully you into changing a pass interference call or any penalty at all, pussies. But I'm not going to put them as are you high. Instead, dude, are you high? It is, I don't know who to, I guess King Mac, maybe, Bama's offensive staff or defensive staff, I mean, or just their whole staff in general. I don't know if you saw it. It's been a real big thing this year with teams faking injuries. Now, you can argue, you can't say whether they're faking it or not. No, sometimes you can. Sometimes it is so obvious. Ole Miss did it earlier this year. Shadur Sanders did it against North Dakota State. But we may have seen one of the worst ones yesterday. Bama scrambling. Tennessee's lined up. They're ready to run a play, and Bama's still trying to figure out who they even want on the field. One guy starts to come off, King Mac. Bama, defensive staffer shoves him back onto the field because, no, dude, you're supposed to be out there. So he runs out there like 3 or 4 steps and then just collapses because he got injured. Refs called a penalty because it was an illegal substitution because the ball did end up getting snapped. But, dude, and the Tennessee fans lost it, of course. If there had not been a penalty called there, we would have had to protect those refs. Let's just put it that way. Someone would have had to protect those refs because shit would have happened. But they did call a penalty, so it worked out. But, dude, are you high? You did not get injured. You cannot make it that obvious. I've seen some obvious ones. That was the most obvious one I've ever seen in my life. Bama, King Mac, are you high? Thanks for joining me, guys. It's been a pleasure. It was a good weekend of college football. I'm excited for what next week has to bring. I will talk to you guys later this week to preview Week 9.